d'Australie et le maillot jaune, Christopher Friebe, le corps de l'équipe Sky qui rejoint le podium deuxième. Et il y a un non vainqueur de l'étape d'hier comme il s'était imposé à la planche des Belgians.
Hello and welcome to the Tour de France podcast with humansinvent.com. My name is Richard Moore. I am joined tonight by Lionel Birnie.
Good evening, Richard.
And Daniel Friebe.
Good evening.
Packed episode tonight. I think we've got lots to talk about. We've got Dan Martin's terrific stage win, first stage win for Garmin-Sharp. We've got Team Sky's implosion, Chris Froome's isolation. We've got interviews with Ryder Hesjedal. We've got an interview with Bjarne Riis, the impassive Bjarne Riis. We'll be announcing the winner of the David Miller phone call. Somebody will be getting a phone call from David Miller tomorrow on the rest day.
Rich, we've got to drive about 700 kilometres. Hurry up, man.
Should have said, incidentally, that was Daniel Monja introducing Chris Froome at the stage start this morning. Monja, the iconic voice of the Tour, has been doing that job since 1974. And he talks non-stop for about an hour as the riders sign on every morning. Just a stream of words. Goes to great lengths to look after his voice, I believe. Anyone got any Monja stories?
No, but I once heard that Lionel Richie has a voice lubricator that he uses before he goes on stage. I wonder if Monja uses the same kind of equipment.
I read that Monja doesn't talk at all between engagements on the platform and the signing on platform at the Tour. He rests his voice completely, and then it erupts like a volcano.
He also has an encyclopedic knowledge of riders' race results. If you listen to him in the morning, he will tell you every sixth place finish in every minor race.
Dan Lloyd tells a funny story about that in the cycling anthology, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. Basically, at the start in Rotterdam, that wasn't actually Monjas, though, was it? It was Marcel.
Monjas' son works as well as announcer. Right. We're rambling a bit here. Monjas never mentions doping, though. Any writer at all, if there's any doping infraction, he never mentions that. He'll mention that he was once 12th in Flèche Wallonne in 1999, but he doesn't mention the fact they've served a 2-year doping ban. Anyway, enough of that. So, where are we tonight, Lionel?
Well, we are in Bagnères-de-Bigorre in the
searching your brain there, weren't you? You weren't quite sure.
I'm afraid I've had a bit of a jour sans today. I've had
a brilliant day.
I've had a Richie Port kind of day today. We're outside. I don't even know what this is. A gymnasium or some kind of. I think it is a gymnasium.
It's a gymnasium, definitely another gymnasium.
Yeah, we're making our way
surrounded
around France.
By verdant hills. Very green hills. It's very green.
It's very green shorts that gentleman's wearing as well.
The Pyrenees are lush and green, and it's a beautiful part of the world.
And we're sitting on a sort of five-a-side football.
Netball as well.
Netball, basketball, court. Yeah.
God, we really are.
Yeah, rambling. Come on,
let's crack on.
Get on.
All right, Daniel, calm down. Okay, today's stage. Let's talk in this first part about Dan Martin, Garmin-Sharp. Having as we do to drive from the start to finish means that we sometimes miss the most interesting part of the day, and that certainly proved to be the case today. The race was on right from the start. It was quite a short stage, but 5 mountain passes. I understand Garmin-Sharp. Well, I heard 2 versions. I heard that Sky began the stage, at the front, riding pretty hard, as if to send out a kind of statement. But I also heard that Garmin-Sharp were very active very early on. Dan Martin afterwards said that David Miller, Janet Bauer and others had almost put themselves out the time limit by just through the work that they did for him early on. So Daniel, can you shed any light on those first hour or so of racing?
Not really, Rich. I just know that a lot happened. The way it was described to me that the most dangerous point in the race for Chris Froome and Sky was, I think, after the Col de Monte, when a fairly small group was together, which later became much bigger, containing Valverde and Quintana and I think Rui Costa as well, and Dan Martin. And that was the point where really I think Chris Froome's isolation was at its most alarming.
Dangerous.
Yeah.
We are talking about Dan Martin here. Garmin-Sharp said, David Miller has said that they had a plan today to win the stage. It's interesting, the little clip of the interview we played with Dan Martin after yesterday's stage, he did suggest that today might be a day that he could go for the stage win.
And he absolutely loves the Pyrenees. His family came on holiday to the Pyrenees for years and years. I think they stayed at the bottom of Lussard-et-Den, I seem to recall, Saint-Lary-Soulon. They used to go on holiday. And his best results, certainly in the mountains in France, have come in the Pyrenees. The first race that he really excelled in as a professional was the Route du Sud that he won, I think, in 2008, was it, or 2009, which is based in the Pyrenees. And last year, he talked actually in the press conference tonight about having had a difficult first tour, but he rode very well in the stage over the Tourmalet last year and came quite close to winning that stage.
Well, Jonathan Vaughters specifically singled this stage out for Garmin-Sharp, didn't he? I believe before the race started. So they did have this plan. And it was one of the things that Jonathan said after the team time trial, which everyone was kind of expecting Garmin to do well enough, possibly win the team time trial in Nice, but certainly perhaps do well enough to put David Miller into the yellow jersey that day. And it didn't quite come off. And he made the point that he had specifically chosen climbers, a more climber-heavy roster than perhaps they would have done if they'd been targeting a team time trial victory. So it's certainly been in their thoughts, and with this one was always the more likely one of the two Pyrenean stages, because yesterday, no matter what happened, it was always going to be that GC shootout we saw with Sky setting that fierce pace. Whereas today, with the descent from the Orquette climb, there was opportunity for a bit of clever riding, and I think Martin, and let's not forget Jakob Fuglsang as well of Stana, they both timed their move very well. And that was an ideal partnership because they're both great climbers. They shared the workload pretty evenly.
I must confess, I was quite surprised to see Fuglsang catch Martin, because he countered and caught Martin, and I would say that Martin was a much stronger climber than Fuglsang.
I think it was in Dan's interest and Martin's interest to get caught and to ride together to the finish. And Dan Martin is very blessed as a rider in that he has quite remarkable speed for a guy of his build, and it makes him very, very clinical. In fact, in the last couple of years, his best results up until this year had probably come in one-day races, and that is because he has got this very sort of clinical finishing kick.
It was odd watching the finishing sprint when he gave that little look round to see Fuglsang, and I because on the screen we couldn't quite tell how close they were to the line. I thought at that moment he realised he'd blown it, but actually quite the opposite. I think that was the point where he knew he had it in the bag and that Fuglsang had nothing to come at him with. It's difficult. I said yesterday actually one of the most entertaining things to watch is climbers sprinting at the end of a stage like this. But as Daniel makes a point, Martin is not, he's not a sort of spaghetti-armed climber when he sprints. He's actually got a good bit of technique about him. And
what kind of pasta what pasta shape would you say he most resembles? That's a new feature. We need a Chiro for that.
Fusilli.
Fusilli, yeah, maybe, a tagliatelle or something.
Yeah. Chris Friebe's more sort of linguine, isn't he?
Certainly. Yeah, it was a clinical win. He got Fuglsang to the front with about a kilometre to go, and from that moment there was only really one winner. He obviously knew he was safe, and it was a terrific win. He attacked just after I think 4 little jabs by Quintana. There was a lull as they regrouped, and off he went. It was textbook stuff. Perfect moment to go, and that's his tour of success.
Yeah, it is. But Martin's he's now up to 8th in the general classification, 2 minutes 28 behind Froome. He was already talking about looking ahead at the Alps. What do you think's possible for him in the third week?
Another stage win, I think.
He won this stage, as the French say, à la pédale. It was very much. It wasn't just a lucky break. It was certainly. He was strong enough to hold off a really strong group there. So I think top 10. And like Rich says, another stage win. I think mountains competition has definitely taken a back seat now. He's not really shown too much interest in that, which I think is right.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because it's not got perhaps the same level of prestige that it did, certainly when I got into cycling in the 80s. You know, Robert Miller would target the King of the Mountains jersey, and funnily, you know, he always preferred the Pyrenees to the Alps as well, didn't he? There must be something about.
I tell you what, it's worth us maybe looking at when we get to the Alps is the complete bunkum and contradictory cliches that get spouted about the difference between the Alps and the Pyrenees. I heard Mark Cavendish on TalkSport yesterday say stages of the Tour, and he said the Pyrenees are much longer than the Alps.
And the road surface was bad.
And then I think I read something from Pierre Roland the same day which said Pyrenees are much shorter than the Alps, but the road surface is much better. But
it's funny, unusual for Mark Cavendish to make a mistake if he has, certainly in his books and things like that.
Perhaps he doesn't really pay a great deal of attention to the mountain. He's just thinking about getting over them, isn't he?
Well, there are long Pyrenean climbs and short Pyrenean climbs and steep Pyrenean climbs and not steep.
Nice little postscript to today's stage is that was the first Irish stage win in 21 years.
Was it really Irish though, Rich?
Controversial, Daniel. Since Dan Martin's uncle, Stephen Roach, won in 1992. And another
in the mist in La Bourboule. I remember Channel 4's coverage being very disappointing that day because the cloud was so low. They had no pictures until Roach sort of.
It was his last hurrah really with Carrera.
It was.
And then also another little link is that we mentioned Robert Miller there being the last British/Irish rider to win in the Pyrenees. He, I believe, shared an apartment with Dan Martin's father, Neil, at ACBB, the great Parisian cycling club in the early 80s. I think they briefly shared an apartment.
Another link, Rich, is that this podcast is graced by the presence of a very preeminent British author who wrote a book about Robert Miller.
Indeed,
conveniently.
That's absolutely true, Daniel.
And the fourth link, Rich, if we can conclude this section fairly soon, because we have got a long drive, is I spoke to Ryder Hesjedal, that finished Dan Martin's teammate. It was actually very interesting. It was an interesting snapshot into the sort of psyche of the teammate who is having a bit of a nightmare himself and who has to reconcile that with great elation at his mate and teammate having won a stage. So,
that's always interesting.
And that comes through very forcibly in this interview with Ryder Hesjedal. How's the rib?
Fractured rib, heals as he raced the Tour de France. But
it must have felt good, though, to be in the thick of the action at least.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to do. We weren't scared. I mean, it was a ridiculous stage to go like that, but we have enough guys. We have that luxury, and the guys are incredible, and everyone did exactly what we set out to do, and we thought that Dan could win the stage today, so it's pretty incredible.
Great season for Dan. Did you see, right from the start of the year, did you get the feeling that he was set for a really good season?
I mean, he's been good lots, more than just this season. He's always had talent, and he's just progressing. He's getting older. It's been great to watch. I think I've had a nice part of his big results this year, and that's what it's all about. So, I know what it feels like when you can do no wrong and you feel good. So.
The Tour de France with humansinvent.com. Innovation, craftsmanship and design.
Some of the sounds of the tour there picked up on our little tape recorders. I think, Lionel, you caught the Thomas Vogler reception this morning at the start.
Yeah, I did. Just interesting to see that he is loved everywhere in France. But this morning, the group outside the Europe car team bus were particularly fanatical, chanting his name, as you heard there, and then cheering wildly when he stepped out, still trying to lick soup from his chin, left over from yesterday. And he signed a lot of autographs, and he had a lot of time for the spectators there at the start. And I think that's one of the great things about cycling, isn't it, and the Tour de France, is that the fans do get close to their heroes. It's nice to see.
And Daniel, you picked up a bit of Astroloza fan club chanting.
Yeah, I saw you, Rich, interviewing Bjarne Riis just a short
we'll
distance
be hearing that
away.
later.
And there was a huge band of Mikel Astroloza fans. The Basque fans, we've noticed this, we've spoken about this a few times over the last few years. They're not as numerous as perhaps they they were in the early part of the last decade when Iban Mayo was cutting a swathe through the Tour de France and in the Pyrenees. But yeah, they're still out in force, and they were very vocal at the finish line.
The warmth of the Basque fans contrasted with the icy, cold Bjarne Riis, who, as Daniel mentioned there, I spoke to just before we discuss the stage. We'll maybe listen to the interview with Bjarne Riis, where he discusses what happened today, what he made of Movistar's tactics, and also his surprise at Team Sky's implosion. Disappointed last night at what happened yesterday, but obviously came out fighting today. Was that part of the plan that you hatched overnight?
Yeah, kind of wanted to attack today and go in the attacks and see what could happen, but Sky didn't want anybody to go away, including us, and that cost them a lot of energy, a lot of power. We saw in the end of the day Froome was alone. And I think
Were you surprised how early Froome was isolated?
Actually, yes.
Are you pleased or happy tonight that more advantage wasn't taken of the fact that Froome was isolated? Because he's obviously still in the yellow jersey, still with the same lead.
No, he's still strong. Come on. You need to be very strong to drop him on the climbs. Although he's alone, he can still pedal. No, I expected that, and I think it was a hard day for everybody, but we saw some good movements and things we liked. So I think that's...
Was Alberto better today than yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely. Better? He was a lot better, and I feel a lot more comfortable.
Roman Kreuziger looks very strong as well. Was there an idea perhaps for him to attack today at any point?
Yeah, but as long as we have so many Movistar in the front, they control very well, they were strong, then there's not much to do.
Were you surprised Movistar didn't try to attack more? Or?
Yeah, I expected them to do more, yeah. Even that to catch the two leaders, because Valverde is fast in the sprint, so he can win the stage. No, it's not over. It's going to be a lot of interesting days.
You're listening to the Tour de France podcast with humansinvent.com and Sharp.
So Bjarne Riis there expressing his surprise. He's a notoriously awkward interviewee, Bjarne Riis. We've got more on Riis tomorrow when we're going to talk about the thorny subject of doping a bit more. But today, Team Sky, they had a collective jour sans, didn't they?
Lionel Blair, didn't they?
Absolutely. What happened? They were last night. The chat. I mean, there was an interesting contrast in the reaction to, and the reaction in some quarters to Dan Martin's victory today in a very hard stage, and the reaction in some quarters to Chris Froome's victory and the collective strength of Team Sky yesterday. There was a lot of talk about doping suspicion last night. Haven't heard any of that today. That's not a surprise. Sky, I think they certainly did their bit today to quash some of those suspicions, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? The problem is that we're looking for sort of patterns all the time, aren't we? We're always looking for indicators and patterns of, strength or weakness. And some people will say that, consistency is an indication of, high level of consistency is an indication of doping. Some will say that it's completely the opposite. Some will say that having erratic performances is an indication of doping. Some will say completely the opposite. It's impossible to read in that context at the moment, because we're only 9 stages into the tour. But certainly in terms of what this means for Team Sky coming up, when we get to Mont Ventoux and into the Alps, when there's several difficult mountain stages back to back, Froome, even with the cushion he's got at the moment, and that could well extend in the time trial up at Mont Saint-Michel on Wednesday, even if he extends his advantage, he's still going to need the support of his teammates, particularly early on in those stages. And the fact that it basically went missing early on, Kirienka, Siutsu, Lopez,
they all fell apart.
Port particularly, but
yeah.
then you think of it. He was so good yesterday. Did he just go too deep and suffer from the fast start and overcook it?
I wonder. I mean, I also noticed he was getting a lot of bottles, and I wondered if there was some dehydration there. He was obviously caught up in the excitement yesterday. Maybe he just got a little bit carried away and didn't do the things that you need to do, which is to rehydrate, and especially in this heat. And we should mention as well, Peter Kenyuk fell into a ravine and was very lucky not to be more seriously injured. And he was able to give Richie Porte a little bit of help, as I understand was Geraint Thomas. But it seems that Movistar really went on the offensive early on. I think on the second climb in particular, the Col de Monte, they really turned the screw, and they had 5 or so riders up there piling on the pressure, and one by one Froome lost his teammates and was completely isolated with about 120 kilometres still to race. I mean, it should be said that Froome didn't at any point look in any difficulty, and that might explain why. We heard there that Bjarne Riis was slightly critical of Movistar not attacking a little bit more and not bringing the break back at the end. But Froome did respond very well to all of Quintana's attacks. I don't think Valverde had the legs to attack. So he did cope with it very well. But I did think that Froome, when he came into the press conference afterwards, looked kind of shell-shocked. He looked a bit traumatised by, it was a very marked contrast to last night when he was ebullient and very optimistic and talking then optimistic about his team. And today, he didn't look like he looked like a man kind of worried. He looked like a worried man, I would say.
He was isolated for a lot of the stage, and I said he was like a sitting duck. He reminded me a bit of the Mega Smeralda that we spent a lot of time on at the Grand in Corsica. I said I was very
not
worried.
Not quite as bulky.
Well, I was very worried about the terrorist threat, and I said that the Mega Smeralda was really a sitting duck. It was a prime target for.
Where are you going here exactly?
Wow. And also yellow, wasn't it? Predominantly yellow, the Mega Smeralda. but Movistar, it was interesting. I spoke to Movistar manager Eusebio Unzué at the start this morning and also tonight. And this morning he said that something that a lot of people hadn't picked up on yesterday was Quintana's attack was perhaps responsible for a lot of the damage behind Chris Froome yesterday, because Sky had gone very, very hard to pull Quintana back, and consequently when Froome did finally attack, then there were a lot of guys already on the rivet and it exploded behind them. And then today, you thought that they were going to start firing guys off the up the road early, on the penultimate climb or even 3 climbs from the end. They waited right until the end, the last 3 or 4 kilometres of the final climb, and it was really too late. And it was obvious by then that Valverde didn't have the legs to go, and they weren't able to counter punch, which would have been the ideal scenario. But
I think the ideal scenario would have been sacrificing Valverde. I know he's second overall, but Quintana he looks good, and I think that they're using him up as a bullet too early. And had Valverde been the guy to attack,
or even Rui Costa was
Rui Costa, exactly, on the penultimate climb, as early as that, why not make Froome make those efforts on the penultimate climb?
And something that I didn't agree with, and I didn't really understand, Unzué said at the finish that it wasn't ideal terrain, and Contador said this as well. It wasn't ideal. Now, they both talked about the distance of the summit from the finish, and it was a 30k descent, but it was pretty much a descending false flat. But surely, if you've got a guy isolated like Chris Froome, you almost want to attack on the flat more than you do on the climb, because on the climb he's the strongest guy anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It's harder on the flat.
Exactly. So that was something I didn't really understand.
There was also a headwind, I understand, quite a stiff headwind for much of the last climb and all the way to the finish, which does tend to make it harder for individuals in attacks over groups.
Movistar. Hey.
Oh my goodness! Look who it is.
Oh my
Chiro.
Who is this?
Just to say to all our listeners that
no, your fans,
don't worry. Sooner or later, I will be back.
Well, that's
only this for
Chiro, that's up to us.
Chiro, can I get a quick comment from you on Sky's collapse today? What did you think?
I'm still looking forward to understand what did happen, and I hope to understand as soon as possible, because I have to prepare an article
for
tomorrow's Gazzetta about that, and for the moment I don't have a lot of ideas.
Can you let us know when you find out?
I hope so.
Especially Kirienka. We don't know what happened with Kirienka.
Exactly. I spoke to Dave Brailsford after the stage. He said that...
Sir Dave Brailsford.
Sir Dave Brailsford, sure, sorry. He said that Kirienka tried to give the possibility to Porto to come back on the main bunch, and then when he turns, it was empty.
He finished a long way down, a long way off the back group. He was 37 minutes down, and he's out the race. He's been eliminated.
Yes, exactly. But Sir Dave Bradford say, yes, it's a big loss. But also last year we lost a man as a Suzzo after 3 stages, and at the end we finished first and second. So let's see.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Chiro.
Bye, Chiro.
As always,
You've had a moment to gather your thoughts there, Lionel.
Well, I was just looking at who was in that group, and it wasn't just Movistar who had a strength in numbers. Saxo Bank as well, Belkin and Katusha, and I just wonder what is the sort of sense. I know it's still early, but everyone seemed very keen to keep both cards, or in Movistar's case, 3 cards in play.
But these situations don't come up very often, do they?
That's what we said, and that's what I said to Unzway at the finish. And they seem to want to chip away, and they see today as a victory because they've taken out Kirienka, they've taken out Froome, and they see that as Port, and they see that as having taken one step further towards finally dethroning Froome. But like
with
you said,
Froome, with Valverde,
well, yeah,
it's hard to see, isn't it?
I mean, how many times have we seen scenarios like this in the last few years? Almost never. Where there's been a leader who's been almost impregnable, and you just don't isolate them. And I talked earlier. I remembered the 1997 stage in the Vosges, which Festina completely messed up. They isolated Ulrich, but it happens every 15 years. A scenario like today.
Yeah, it's curious. And tomorrow's a rest day, of course, and we'll have the press conference, so and there'll be I suppose the inquest will continue into Team Sky's collapse today. Brailsford did seem still pretty chirpy, and I almost said chirpy at the end of the stage there. But he has seemed very relaxed. We actually saw Brailsford and Tim Kerrison riding back up the mountain yesterday. Oh, really? Yeah. Kerrison looked very good, actually. Very smooth.
I think he'll be in the team next year.
He might be Pedlar de Charme winner tonight. But yeah, we're going to speak to them tomorrow. I'm going to speak to Tim Kerrison tomorrow as well, and I'm hoping to play a bit of that interview on our podcast. That's when we're going to really tackle some of the discussion around wattages and so on. There was a lot of talk last night, just to mention this briefly, about supposed or estimated wattages put out by Chris Froome on that climb. Had me thinking today there were more figures released for today, by unofficial people, and with the headwind today, I'm sure that would have come into play. Lionel, you got anything to say about? I'm
having a shocker today. I've been talking about Siutsu. He's not even in the tour, is he?
Yeah, he is.
Is he?
Oh God, Lionel!
I'm all over the.
Yeah, Siutsu's in the tour. He crashed out last year. He's still in it. He's had a couple of Girons, hasn't he?
Having a bit of a tour song.
He is. Didn't appear in a very good mood again. And then David Lopez appeared at the team bus and fell off his bike. I mean, really?
It's amazing. Yesterday we were pretty much wrapping up the tour, weren't we? We were talking all about how confident Froome was, and that confidence coming from such a good team performance, certainly from Port. But actually,
we thought it'd be boring.
Now you look back at that and think perhaps the signs were there. The fact that there was only Kenyuk, Port, and Froome for the last climb. So perhaps there is something more afoot. But if there is, I don't know, maybe, as you said, Rich, dehydration, maybe a little bit of sickness going through the camp. I mean, they're never going to confirm that because obviously that's giving your rivals all the encouragement they would need. But perhaps something will come out, in weeks
due
to
course.
come. Due course.
This is a humansinvent.com Tour de France podcast with Richard Moore, Daniel Friebe and Lionel Birnie.
Yes, you are listening to the Tour de France podcast, humansinvent.com. Daniel is champing at the bit to get up the road. We've got to drive to Bordeaux tonight, which is about
I'm not driving
250 kilometres away.
I'm not driving. I'm thinking of you, Rich. I'm not driving anywhere.
Okay, we are. We're driving a long way, aren't we, Lionel?
We are, and we've got another 350 to do tomorrow
morning. 250 tonight and 350 tomorrow morning.
Dry your eyes, Lionel, because I've got 700 kilometres to do tomorrow.
Have you?
Yeah.
You're doing why are you doing that?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. So whoever's in charge of our logistics is definitely having a jour song.
Right, okay, that's unlucky, Daniel. So yeah, we've got a big journey. So we've got a few things. Any other business under the any other business heading? Pedlar de Charme. Let's hear from Chiro again.
And now Pedlar de Charme.
Now we've been asked to specify exactly what our Pedlar de Charme, our daily competition, means. I think traditionally in the Tour, and this was an actual prize given out to riders in the 50s. Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Was it not just Jacques Anquetil's nickname?
No, it was Hugo Cobley originally.
Coblay's nickname, was that not?
Yeah, it was his nickname, but I thought there was, maybe I'm wrong, But, like there was a Citron as well a few years ago for the most unpleasant rider to journalists.
To photographers.
Oh, to photographers, sorry. The Peddler de Charme, let's try and explain what it means. It can mean the most elegant rider, the most stylish rider, one of whom Kirianka's on his way home. That's a shame, because you were going to do an interview with him tomorrow, weren't you, Daniel?
I asked for an interview about 10 minutes before the finish.
But it can also mean charm in the other sense of being polite. And have we got any contenders today?
Not really.
Oh, this is disappointing. We've got such a good jingle, we've got to have some kind of award.
In terms of the aesthetics of someone's riding style, I think, it's my favourite topic, the young French climbers.
He loves his young Frenchmen.
Romain Bardet look very, very silky, didn't he? He had another outstanding performance today after a very good one yesterday, and on the Hawkett and Cézanne, he looked very, very good indeed.
And did he finish with the front group? I'm just looking for his name.
Unfortunately not. He was 3:54 down.
That's a shame.
Pretty good though.
I'm going to stick with the anti-peddler de Charme, as I started yesterday with Thomas Voeckler and his.
Trust you, Lionel.
Well,
It says a lot.
Well, Daniel Martin's too obvious. I mean, he looks like one of those nodding dogs you see in the back.
You're going to alienate our Irish audience and Birmingham.
Birmingham audience, yeah.
It's the nodding head.
The funky chicken.
It's the funky chicken. It's quite uncomfortable to watch. I find it quite uncomfortable to watch. But it's in a way it's exciting. I can feel my heart rate rising as I watch Daniel Martin pedalling.
He almost nods in time to his heart rate, doesn't he?
Well, I don't know about that.
I think he'll end up with brain damage if he does that.
And my other one, sticking with the dog theme, Laurens ten Dam. I mean, he just looks to me like a thirsty sausage dog.
He's doing well though, isn't he?
He is doing very well, but just
big
facially,
hush puppy.
Yeah, he is a thirsty sausage dog. So they're my two nominations today.
Yeah, not so charming, but Richie Porte came out with a great quote at the end there. He was asked about what happened. He said, credit to Valverde, he must have quite a pair of swingers to have taxed so early.
I didn't know Richie Porte was South African.
I wasn't even attempting any kind of accent there, to be honest. That was my normal accent, my Scottish accent. And on the subject of Scottishness, my peddler to charm today is Andy Murray for winning Wimbledon. Just wanted to mention that. We'll nail down this peddler de charme thing, and we've got to come up with some nominations that reflect the quality of our jingle, I think.
This is the humansinvent.com Tour de France podcast, powered by Sharp.
So another competition, David Miller. Win a phone call from David Miller, the Garmin-Sharp rider, on Monday during the rest day. Now, we had lots of entries for this. It was #tour moment. And there were a lot nominating David Miller's stage win in 2012. Also his near miss in 2009 into Barcelona, which was a good nomination. We felt, however, that it was slightly... We thought that there was maybe a bit of calculation going on there in selecting a Miller moment for a Miller phone call.
A bit oily.
Slightly creepy. Not creepy, I didn't mean that. So we'll prove something. I quite like Geoff Furby's entry, Froome attacking Wiggo last year, me not understanding, and my friend spending the next 2 weeks explaining it to me. I think Wiggo needed even longer than that for it to be explained to him, but never mind. I think we go with Jen Loves Cycling, so it's at Jen Loves Cycling. My favourite tour moment of all time is Mark Cavendish winning on the Champs-Élysées as world champion from last year. So well done, Jen. You'll be getting a phone call from David Miller tomorrow, whether you like it or not. And I'm sure the details of that will be hammered out by Humans Invent. So if you can send a tweet, including the at Humans Invent handle, they can get in touch and tell you how that phone call is going to materialise. Any other business?
I think the auto grill beckons for you guys, doesn't it?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
If we're lucky, yeah, we've got to get on the road.
Sunday nights aren't good for dinner, are they?
No, they're not.
So that's all for today. We'll be back tomorrow, the Rest Day podcast, when we want to probably explore the implications of today once more and look at some other topics in a bit more depth.